Welcome to the 9:30 call. We are recording this so that we will have an opportunity to continue to connect the early childhood agenda to the 9:30 call. And we're so excited to be talking about priority number 3 this morning, and then we'll have another discussion and update on Thursday. But I will turn things over to Charlotte Bruce from the, she's going to talk about, I can't even, oh my gosh, Charlotte, I'm going to turn it over to you because I have too many things on my head right now. Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to share it?
I'm happy to share my screen.
Okay, great. Let me just make sure we have the settings all set. Okay, and then as our 9:30 call protocol, if you could tell us a little bit about you and how you came into your current role.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for having us here today. I'm with my colleague Allison as well, who will let introduce herself in a minute, but I am Charlotte Bruce. I'm the Senior Research and Policy Analyst with Children's Health Watch, and we are a network of pediatricians and child health researchers headquartered at Boston Medical Center, really focused on collecting research as well as using that research to advance policy for young children and their families in Massachusetts, as well as on the federal level in some other states. And so we come from this work from a health perspective and really thinking about tax credits as a way to get cash in families' hands and to boost their financial resources to be able to afford things like childcare and other basic needs for their families. And so we launched this coalition back in 2015. But I'll turn it to my colleague Allison to kind of kick us off and introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Allison Bobel-Ammon. I'm the Director of Policy and Communications for Children's Health Watch, and excited to be here to talk more about our coalition and our work. So maybe we'll get right into it. We're going to talk about 2 tax credits today and our campaign around these 2 tax credits. So first, just a quick crash course in what is the Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC. This is a refundable tax credit for workers with low and moderate incomes. And so basically what refundable means is that if the EITC that someone is eligible for is greater than the amount of taxes that they owed, so their tax liability, then they can get the remainder of that credit in form of a refund or a check when they file their taxes, basically right now, between now and April 18th, or even beyond that if they have an extension or are not required to file by that date. And in Massachusetts, we're one of the now growing number of states that have a state earned income tax credit. And here in Massachusetts, our state tax credit is very simple. It is a piggyback on the federal credit. So the state calculates 30% of what you were given on the federal level, and then they add that on top of what you were given on the federal level. So it reaches over 400,000 families every single year here in Massachusetts. The average federal credit is you can see that $2,000, about $2,100. And then when you add the 30% on top of that for Massachusetts, it takes it up to about $2,700. And this is a really big boon for our state every year. $721 million of federal tax dollars just from the EITC comes to our state, and research shows that it's immediately spent on the things that families need to support their children: food, childcare, winter coats, all of the things that you can sort of think of that families need, that flexible cash in order to receive. This EITC is, as you can see here, we call it the trapezoid of eligibility. You'll see on the next slide sort of exact amounts, but basically there's a phase in. So as you start earning money up to a certain amount, then your credit grows, and then it flattens out for a while. And then as you earn more and more money, there's a phase out. So just go to the next slide. You can see what that sort of looks like. So as you can see here, there's sort of different tiers around marriage, or whether you're a single filer, and the number of children you have up to 3 children. So remember that for one of our priorities here in a minute. After you have 3 children, you actually still get the same amount as if you had 3 children. But you can see sort of the credit amounts. Again, this is on the federal level at different incomes. Next slide. So, as Charlotte noted, our work is really around how do policies improve the health of young children and families, infants and toddlers and preschoolers and their families. And so, people often think, why is a group of pediatricians and public health researchers interested in tax? Well, the tax system and the earned income tax credit in particular have a lot of growing and robust evidence around the health benefits of the credit. So we really got into this work starting to understand that this wasn't just about economic generation and work productivity and other things that people often talk about around the EITC. This was also really about health and bolstering the health of families, particularly those with low and moderate income. So you can see there's a number of research sort of connecting the dots on positive health outcomes of the EITC for children and adults. Next slide. So here's just briefly what our priorities around the EITC are for this year. When we launched this campaign 8 years ago, we set our goal at having an increase of the state match to 50% because it was really tied to that research around, $1,000 extra for a family can mean that there's less a chance of low birth weight, better health outcomes, that sort of stuff. And so we really have, for the past several years, been working towards increasing that match rate to 50%, and that remains our goal here. We also want to expand, and you can see here what that sort of means in money in people's pockets on this nice bar chart by family size. We also want to make sure that this reaches all families who are eligible for it. So there are immigrants who are paying taxes, but file with what's called an individual tax ID number. So this is for people who don't have a Social Security number. We'd like to expand the earned income tax credit to include those families. Right now, if one parent has a Social Security number and the other one has an I-10, that family is still not eligible. So we really, lots of US citizen children and many others are missing out on this tax credit. So we want to expand it to them. And then also, as you saw in that other trapezoid graph, the families with, 4 or more children really don't see an additional benefit, even though they have larger families. So we'd like to remove the large family penalty on the EITC. Next slide. So finally, I want to just transition momentarily into our priorities around the child and family tax credit. So this is a new tax credit that we are proposing that actually the governor has also proposed on the campaign trail that would basically streamline 2 existing tax credits, simplify the tax code, and create this one tax credit that would basically be worth $600 per dependent. Now, this credit currently, these two credits are currently universally available to all families who meet the eligibility criteria, including immigrant families, so including those families that are filing with I-10s. And this sort of alignment was also proposed by Governor Healy and was actually also passed as part of a economic development package that passed the House and Senate last year, but didn't ultimately get all the way over the finish line. So we see a lot of ripe opportunity for this and really connected to a lot of the priorities that many of our partners are pushing for. And so we're very excited to be adding this priority to our agenda. We also want to remove the large family penalty cap on these tax credits. And currently the credits are only available to children under the age of 12. But we'd like to remove the dependent age limits so that all dependents and all children are eligible for this $600 per dependent. So here again, you can see what that would really mean in real numbers for families. So the red and the blue bars here are the existing tax credits that families can apply for. The green is what the streamlined credit and the boosted credit with the changes that we're recommending would be for families. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Charlotte, who's going to talk a little bit more about how this intersects with your priorities and how you can get involved in our coalition.
Thank you. So why, as Allison said, so tax policy, why are we talking about that in the space of childcare? Why did it make it onto the early childhood agenda. First, as I said at the beginning, it's really a way to boost total financial resources for families to afford needs and afford things for their family, to supplement workforce wages. So we've been thinking a lot about not just families with children who need childcare, but also childcare workforce. As we've talked about a lot on the 9:30 call, and as all of you are aware, the very slow growing and low wages, this is another opportunity to supplement that beyond our other childcare advocacy priorities. Through the reason that we're really focused these credits through the tax code is that they are not counted as income when you're thinking about other public benefits. So I know that's been a concern across the board, really, as families increase their income and then become ineligible for other things like childcare vouchers or food assistance or other programs, because this is administered through the tax code. Even though it is a direct check that goes back into families' pockets, it doesn't count as their total income for those programs. And then really why we've expanded to include this new child and family tax credit beyond the EITC is because it does have that much wider net of who it captures. You don't need to have an earned income to be able to be eligible for it. You're also able to be, as Allison said, an immigrant with this individual tax ID number, as you aren't for the EITC. So kind of just looking at, obviously there's some overlap of who qualifies for EITC and child and family tax credit, but there's also a much wider net there. There also is some research around how the EITC in particular, as well as the federal child tax credits, support families' childcare arrangements. So recently there were some research around that they support informal care arrangements. So families who choose to take care for their child at home or have a relative take care of their child who may not be eligible for some other childcare assistance, they've really shown that these credits support that arrangement. So one other piece around our campaign and priorities are volunteer income tax assistance sites. So this program, so while there are these existing tax credits and hopefully these changes that we're pushing for this session, they really only matter if families are actually accessing them. Like we said, particularly with the child and family tax credit, since there's no income requirement around that, families may not have a tax filing obligation. So they may not file their taxes and even know about these credits and be able to claim them. So oftentimes families are left out just because of awareness and access issues. For example, on the earned income tax credit, there's research that shows that 1 in 5 households who are eligible for the credit do not claim it annually. So that's leaving a lot of money on the table, both in federal dollars as well as the state dollars, and really just money in families' pockets. And so the VITA program is federally funded, but also in recent years, we've had state line item funding in the budget to support VITA sites. And so what they do is there are sites all over the state. There's 80 different sites statewide, and they assist families with low and moderate incomes to file taxes for free, as well as connect them to other resources. And on average, VITA sites have provided families with $60 million in tax credits each year. So it's really big return on investment for families. So turning to opportunities. So we have kind of a two-prong approach here. One is the legislative opportunities. So we have 3 packages of bills. Our Senate champs are Senator Eldridge, as well as Senator DiDomenico, and then on the House side, Rep. Decker and Rep. Vargas. And so this first bill at the top by Senator Eldridge includes all of these things we just described, the earned income tax credit changes, as well as the child and family tax credit changes. And then the following 2 bill packages split those into 2 different buckets. So kind of a mixed strategy, as well as a lot of people excited about the credit and wanting to file legislation around it. So the second one is around just establishing that child and family tax credit. And then this third one is around just the earned income tax credit priorities. As you all know, there's also the budget as an opportunity to pass these changes. And actually, historically, with our coalition work, when we've had expansions to the earned income tax credit in the past, they've all been through budget changes. So first, as Allison mentioned, the child and family tax credit was part of the governor's campaign. She hasn't put anything out since becoming a governor, but we do anticipate that it'll be in her budget that will be released in the next couple of weeks. So that's one opportunity. The only difference between what our coalition would like to see and her campaign proposal was around the age. So she kept hers at children 12 and under, whereas Allison described we'd like to see that expanded to include all children, teens as well. There's also, as you all know, the House and Senate budgets as opportunities. So last session over the summer, they did support an expansion to the earned income tax credit, increasing that rate from 30 to 40%. So not quite at that 50, but we know that there is support for that, as well as these streamlined and boosted dependent credits and eliminating the large family penalty. So again, we know that there's support in the legislature, in the administration, and it's really up to us to kind of push that and keep that drumbeat going of we need this for families and we need an even bigger investment for families. And then the last piece is in the budget, the VITA line item. So as I said, recently in past years, we've gotten line item funding for VITA sites, and this year we're seeking $2 million in FY24 to support VITA. So how can you all get engaged? So we do have a coalition, the Healthy Families Tax Credits Coalition, and there are many ways you can get involved. You could just join our listserv to get action alerts, updates. You can join our monthly coalition meetings. We actually have one later today at 11:30 this morning. But then there's, as you know, a menu of opportunities to get involved, whether you want to join meetings with legislators, if you are able to email your legislators and include in any other priorities you're advocating for, submit when the time comes for hearings, written or oral testimony, as well as we're really trying to do a lot of amplification on social media and media in general to make this more of a conversation and more make folks more aware of these policies that aren't necessarily in kind of the frame of mind typically because they're around such tax policy, but and how they can really connect to things like childcare and all these other sectors. I also include here, we have our new Twitter. You're welcome to follow us on Twitter. That would be great, as well as our website. And I'm going to put in the chat as well, once I stop sharing, we have a Google form. So if you're interested in joining the coalition in any capacity, whether it's just joining the listserv or being more formally a member of our coalition, you can fill out that form and we'll reach out to you. And then here is our contact information. And thank you all so much. And with the last 6 minutes, would love to take any questions and see if there's anything I've missed in the chat.
Thanks so much, Charlotte and Allison. Allison has been busy in the chat, sharing additional resources. Titus asked the question around what can we do as 930 callers. And this is really the first in a series of opportunities to kind of bring the folks that are working on the issues that were identified as priorities in the early childhood agenda. One of the pieces of work that we are doing is clarifying that, you know, the early childhood agenda is not necessarily a coalition. It's really about connecting people to existing coalitions. So if you are very interested in this, we have this infrastructure in Massachusetts, you know, kind of with clear guidelines around a legislative agenda and around how you can get involved. So I think these are the opportunities we want to share and really be the bridge builder and the connector between what exists and how people can kind of bring their early childhood expertise, connection, and just network to the table when we think about all these different pieces that influence and impact the work that we're doing every day. So this is kind of the first example, and kind of behind the scenes, our team at Strategies has been meeting with each of the lead advocates that were identified in the early childhood agenda. We have learned a ton in these 45-minute info sessions. And we'll continue to learn and really thinking about how we can continue to build these connections. The other thing I will just add is, you know, we have a 2-year legislative session. And while kind of the beginning of the session is filled with transition and swearing ins and committee assignments, it is a long haul over the next 2 years for bills. And each year we have a budget that will pass. So we will also be continuing to talk about this kind of in real time as we were going through each one of these steps. To see 778 people sign on to a letter is incredible. We had over 500 people registered for the C3 webinar last week. And then to think about the work that coalitions are doing to best position these issues, around whether it's a budget ask or legislation, that's really kind of where we're most interested in thinking about how we can work together to advance them. There is a question in chat: where does any opposition to these policies come from? Who is against expanding them? Trying to put this in a larger context.
Yeah,
Thank
I can.
you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Allison.
There you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for the question. It's a great question. I think the number one piece around both these credits is particularly child and family tax credit, because it is universal. There is a high cost associated with it, and I think there's always opposition when you're talking about money. And I think particularly on the House side, we found this past session has been a lot more cautious in terms of the growing revenue and kind of what the future revenue outlook is. So I think that's been kind of the biggest barrier. And so what we've really been trying to push is kind of these research connections about what the long-term return on investment would be here. Also, I would say particularly within the EITC work, the expansion to immigrant families is kind of has been controversial for some folks. And so I think we've seen some pushback on that. But really, just framing it up as you all have, and particularly around the EITC, that these are working families who are paying taxes in many other ways, just aren't eligible for this credit.
Yeah,
Great.
and we didn't go into this in super depth, but it is worth noting that economic development package that Charlotte referenced had versions of these two priorities. So the streamlined credit to create the child and family tax credit, it wasn't called that in the bill, but what we're calling the child and family tax credit with a little bit of a boost, not all the way to 600, and then a 40%, an increase to 40% in the EITC. So, we keep taking steps there. Unfortunately, I get all the way across the finish line, but there is broad support for doing something. It's just the robustness and, what's possible.
And we also know from conversations we've been at the state and the federal level, I've heard leaders say, like, we can't tax credit our way out of a decades of neglect of just, funding. But these are so important to thinking about the overall picture of supporting families across the continuum. So I really appreciate kind of that attention on these issues. And as we learn together, we're excited to think about how we can continue to partner on this and also stay updated. So we would invite you to kind of continue to share updates, whether there's, kind of developments, whether there's public hearings around the legislation, please let us know. We did update the 930 call website. So all of the chat, all of the materials are up to date. We will add these slides and fact sheets that both Allison and Charlotte have provided. So thank you for that. And thank you for being our first early childhood agenda bridge builder on the 930 call. I will also say there are 5 priorities from the agenda that did not identify a lead advocate, and we are getting interest from folks to continue to have conversations about kind of how other folks can lead on these kind of opportunities to lead. So we will be continuing to have those conversations and setting up joint conversations. So if people are interested in some of those other agenda items that don't have an identified lead advocate, please let us know, and we'll continue to host these conversations and kind of pull in folks as needed, because again, going back to the expertise that is out here in the work that everybody is doing every day. And so Charlotte or Allison, any last thoughts?
I just dropped again in the chat the form if you want to sign up for our listserv or get in touch with us, but just really appreciate all of you joining us today, and excited to get the childcare sector more involved in this work. So thank you.
Yeah,
That's
thanks so
great.
much.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. We had 70 people join the call. I know some folks have had to drop off because of other engagements, but really appreciate the information and just your partnership. And tomorrow we'll see everybody back here on the 930 call. Have a great day.